Okay. So I think we're good, but I'm just gonna run a few tests. See if we're on. Wait for some people to hopefully join us. Okay, let's see. So we're good on the Twitter. Yep, we're live, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I think we'll be having some others join us shortly, but in the meantime, I'm gonna share these links to the universe. Let's see. Okay. Alright, guys. Sorry about that. I'm just getting all this sent out. I'm ready to go. Alright. So I was kind of thinking today would just be sort of casual. Have a few people on, maybe watch some videos, do some commentary, see where we go with this. Okay. Alright, we got someone joining us in just a second here. So I'm gonna wait for her as I pull up these videos that I want us to cover today. Lots of weird content on Twitter these days that I'd love to just talk some crap about. Oops, sorry guys. Sorry, just helping someone get in the live stream. You're just gonna have to bear with us. Haven't done this in a long time. Okay. Making sure she has the right link. And keep in mind, I will be paying attention to the chats as they come in. Just go ahead and start my screen shares now. these side by side. Of course. All right, let me see. No. Oh my gosh. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that, guys. I think we have. Here we go. Can we hear you?
Hey.
Are you there? All right, awesome. Yeah, sorry. I went down on the live for a second. I'm still remembering how to do all of this again. So, welcome. Why
Okay.
don't, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody?
Are we live right now?
I think we're live right now, yeah.
Oh my gosh. I thought we were gonna. 1 second.
No, you're good. You're good. Okay. I'm so
Okay. Man, I really came on eating hot Cheetos. I thought we were gonna talk first. Sorry.
I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Um
Okay.
so yeah, hi, welcome. I was just getting everything set up. I was just saying like I haven't been live in a long time. So when I was trying to set it so that I can do like the screen share and it made me quit and start over again. So there was like a delay there. But anyway, welcome. Why don't you tell us about you and give us, a little bit about yourself? Introduce yourself to people who are maybe watching who don't know who you are.
Yeah, so my name is Keisha. I have written there. I'm the host of the Karris Project podcast. Um, that's how I met Kim, I guess, through Twitter.
Yeah, well, you also, what do you are like a major advocate. Can you tell us a little bit about the work you do in that regard?
Yeah, so I the reason I created the Karris Project podcast is because I myself had been a victim of human trafficking and I wanted to give a voice to other people who had gone through similar situations. It's actually named after my little sister Karris, because my father and I have not seen her for the last since 2020. So I know that a lot of the media is not actually sharing the truth, like the mainstream or legacy media is not sharing the truth of like what's actually going on with the foster care system, the family courts, and even immigration, the border, and how all of those things are being used. Even state courts are being used to steal people's children, traffic them, certain things like transgender ideology and how those things are taking a play. We've had the privilege of, speaking to some really uh, good people and who have a lot of work in the areas like courage is a habit. Alvin Louis, he talks about how the transgender ideology is being used for this stuff. And so we can really try to connect with people from various different areas to help educate people with the truth and give real life examples in real time, so that people can apply it to their situation and understand how to help themselves moving forward. My father and I were whistleblowers in Canada, actually. He's a mechanical engineer. I worked for the provincial government at a maximum security prison for the criminally and mentally insane, and we were whistleblowing on the improper contagion mitigations and were trafficked as a result of exposing that, on both sides of the border of Canada and the US. So that's a little bit in brief of why we do what we do. And he also shows how that research was used. Well, not the research, how that improper contagion mitigation, all those mandates were used to actually commit treason on both sides of the border. So a little bit about me, I guess.
Yeah, wow. I mean, like that's you have an incredible background. It's unfortunate how you had to go about learning all of these things and getting involved in the first place, but it's inspiring to see because often when people go through such difficult situations, they kind of introvert or they self-destruct, and it's just refreshing to see. And I'm hopeful, it's inspirational to me. I'm not going through even a quarter of that, but I'm hopeful that other people who are seeing you and seeing you speak are feeling that inspiration and finding that inner motivation themselves. That would just be incredible. um,
Yeah, it's a lot what you just said. People are usually like introverted to themselves, and there's so much that we see in our society today that's trafficking in real time in front of people's faces, and they don't realize. And a lot of people say to me all the time, like, "Hey, you're so stoic. You don't show much. You're so composed." And a lot of the people in these situations, they are emotional and have things going on, but in order to protect yourself in these dangerous situations, you have to be a certain way, and they don't get the opportunity to actually, you know, get the help they need or just have a soft place to land. That's what someone said to me the other day. And so I am the kind of person who's introverted. I'm very reserved naturally. This situation makes it a little bit more so, but when you see that there's like a need for something and that people have to know, you just got to do what you got to do to share the information. So it's a worthy sacrifice, I guess.
yeah, I honestly understand that entirely. I'm at least what my friends would call an introverted extrovert. I can turn it on when I have to. I can do the live streams. I can have conversations with people. I can engage and be that person. But I would rather be in my PJs with my animals and my kids and my husband, just like in our little bubble, more
Yeah, and
often than not.
your own life of peace. Yeah.
Right, exactly. But unfortunately, with the kind of stuff that's going on, from the trafficking to the election interference to, um, you know, dangerous medical stuff and everywhere in between, there's no room for good people to stay quiet. There's no good room for good people to not be vocal and not put their thoughts out into the town square of the online atmosphere, because the availability of this information is very limited. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying that there's not a lot of it in terms of quantity, but it's limited in that we go through, suppression as far as algorithmically, and um, these are not topics that are supported by the mainstream media. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with that?
Yeah, so it's crazy. I think the suppression that we've had in the last couple of years is absolutely insane. Like from the very beginning, if I go back to Canada, I mean, where it started, we went to all of the media news outlets, like so many of the mainstream media outlets to share this information. We talked to various agencies. I mean, the governing body for my provincial prison, which was a Saskatchewan Health Authority, my dad's, I guess, governing body for, mechanical engineering, ones that are connected, I guess, on both sides of the border, like ASHRAE and other things. Um, and the amount of pushback we got was insane. I mean, I spoke to the Canadian Union, CUPE. We spoke to people in America. When I came to the United States, I ended up wherever I was, no matter whether I was in that place by force because of the trafficking or fleeing or whatever, I'd gone to various politicians and, governors, or even spoke, to countless people to tell them what's going on. And people kind of just turn a blind eye. And it really like shook me, like even outside of just Twitter, because, the algorithms, they definitely don't want that stuff coming out. But when you go to speak to some of these important people in real time, in real life, it gives you a more understanding of just how much corruption there is in the world. Because online, things are not really real. It's kind of like the Matrix, so to speak, right? And everything can get lost in the sauce. And someone who means to get something out there and has a mission to make sure that something gets done the right way, not my way, the right way, just investigate, do the right thing, make sure that something is done the right way. When you see so many people turn away from it, you're like, now I see why it's happening, because there's so many people who are just either scared to intervene because they're scared of losing a job, they're scared of authority, they're scared of the consequences that I had to go through happening to them and their family. Like what happened to us when we reported it off the bat. When my father first put out his first report on it, and obviously he's an engineer. I think he was going to try to jump on here. He'd probably explain it way better than me, obviously. But uh, when he first put out the report saying what was happening and how the mixing factor was incorrect and all these other things, they instantly came and took my little sister Karris. And then we didn't see her since then, not picture, video, audio, anything. When they persisted, the various government agencies like the Saskatchewan Health Authority, the RCMP, some banks, local banks, churches, and things like that, my prison that I worked for, we ended up trying to go into court, take them to court for not investigating the complaints that were made. And we actually put the video up on Twitter and YouTube. Thank God it was actually documented. But when we were going into court that day, July 23rd, 2020, they had the RCMP with the Saskatchewan Health Authority and the judge involved in arresting us and taking us to different facilities, torturing us, and to extract information, all these things, took our home away, our like all the corporate assets, our cars, um, shut down bank accounts. It was crazy. So the amount of effort that they're going to go through and laws that they're going to break, the money that they're going to spend. And when I worked at the facility that they took me to, first they took us both to North Battleford Hospital, and they took my dad to one portion of the hospital. They held him down against his will and drugged him, strapped him to a table. And then they took me to a separate room and they interrogated me all day, like 6 or 7 male officers, a female officer, searched me under my clothes, everything, interrogating me about my dad's corporation and the research that he was doing. I'm like, you guys could have just read the documents. You got served. We went in and made the complaints with you. After that, they took me to my place of employment on the prison end of the facility, emptied an entire wing of the facility, and held me there by myself in a room for 23 hours. a day, a small room locked down. So I was there for like 8 days, and then they finally released me. My grandma was calling constantly, making missing persons reports to RCMP. You kidnapped my granddaughter. Where is she? They're like, we tested her for COVID and let her go. I know how much money it costs for one bed in that facility. You empty an entire wing with multiple units, multiple beds. That was just the first instance. And then when I got on the other side of the border and I came with that evidence to the border on October 1st of 2020, and DHS apprehended me and gave me to immigration, and then they made me stay in a maximum security prison and immigration detention center for 7 months until the Canadian consulate in California was like, hey, she's an American Indian, like release her. Like, what is going on? Because they tried to deport me back to Canada many times, but American Indians are covered by Article 6 of the Constitution, any treaty ratified by the Senate is the supreme law of the land. They have the Jade Treaty and everything else that gives them the right to pass and repass and live and study, whatever. But you see consistently across the board, whenever the truth is presented, no matter what it is, crimes are being committed to cover it up. And so the suppression is absolutely insane. And I think people don't understand just how much levels you have to go through to do this, how much money you need to do this, how much power and control you need. A lot of people think that it's just one way or the other, like, it was just a mistake or it's bureaucracy. You can't have like 100 teachers in 100 different jurisdictions saying 2 + 2 = 5. It's just not possible. You have to start lining up the dots and saying, okay, what's really going on? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I absolutely do. And I didn't even really realize, I guess, the full extent of your situation. And it's truly heartbreaking what the Canadian government is willing to put you through, as well as our own, as well as the United States government. Um, I wanted to just like circle back. That term has been ruined for me, but I wanted to just circle back really quick to kind of your experience personally with the trafficking, if that's something that you're willing to talk about, because I know you said there's like a bunch of different ways that there's trafficking going on that people aren't aware of and people don't know about. So I was just wondering if like maybe your story had something to do with that, maybe or just in general, like you know what kind of things are people not noticing that they should be noticing?
Well, uh, for example, for me, actually, I was trafficked as a kid as well. First, when I was a baby, the CPS or CFS, whatever you want to call it, Child Family Services, they actually came in and took me from my father on his birthday. They didn't give a reason. They didn't say why. They just came and took me while he was at work. And they made me a permanent ward of the Crown for 3.5 years or something. The first thing that happened though, my mom actually, when I was born, like my dad went in, he signed the paper saying that he's my dad. She signed, put my name, Keisha Richardson. After her mom told her to go back and remove his name from the birth certificate and just sign my name, Keisha Dubois, and father unknown. So then when CFS came in and did that, they're like, well, your name's not on the birth certificate. My dad's like, what are you talking about? I have it right here. They're like, no, I have this. And I found that to be interesting now that I'm older, because one of the things that we're coming across with a lot of people is, especially with transgender people, they want to change their names so that the parents don't have access to the children or rights to the children. And changing the identity is a big portion of making sure that they have control over the kid. But anyways, when I was in the foster care, they moved me around to different places, but I ended up getting really badly abused by that family, the various families, and I was sexually abused in that home, as well as like beaten and starved, and it was an awful experience, which is pretty typical in Canada for Native American children, especially that go into the system, because I mean this was standard operating procedure for them, and now it's pretty much gone to everybody at this point. My dad, though, he fought for 3.5 years to get me back with the government, and he won. Thank God. He was one of two people to get his child back out of foster care, out of permanent ward of the Crown. The other one was a woman. I tell people all the time that shows who my father is as an individual. Now, years later, fast forward maybe 20 years later, my dad has my little sister, Karris. He starts exposing some of this stuff, and the same thing happens. But with me, the one major thing about human trafficking is you have to deprive people of their ability to help themselves. So when they took me and my dad and tortured us in these facilities, and while we were there, cut bank accounts, shut down bank accounts, took our homes, took our cars, all of our assets, left us completely desolate. So by the time we left, we were at the mercy of other people. So when I was released, they told me that I had to go to like a shelter or something, or someone out of state had to come pick me up, or out of province. And my family did, but initially, I ended up being stuck with this one person, Robert Cannon, who's a dual citizen of Canada and the US, who took me to the middle of nowhere and started sexually abusing me, I guess harassing and abusing me, and told me like if I didn't do what he said, that he wasn't going to help my dad. Meanwhile, my dad is in another facility being strapped to a table, drugged against his will. I also have no idea where my sister is. And so you're kind of in this position where you are forced to do a lot of things you don't want to do. You're being forcefully transferred against your will. All of your stuff is taken. I couldn't drive myself around because they took my car even. Then that person took me to the border and then just left me at the border, and just let the DHS people do whatever they want, and they took me. Um, and my rights being violated, I guess, in the US now on that side. Uh, like I said, I'm an American Indian, so I could cross and recross. On the flip side, even if they didn't want to acknowledge the American Indian status, I'm born in Canada. I have no crimes and convictions in any country in the world. Canada has favored nation status in the US anyways. Immigration or just visiting the US is supposed to be easy. Um, and arresting me there, sending me to a facility, forcing me through an asylum process, which they knew that I was not going to have any right to as an American Indian with status already and a Canadian citizen due to the third party agreement. They're making money off of every facility they transferred me to, every state they transferred me to. Um, After they left me, after I was paroled from that facility, they had like I said, they tried to deport me to Canada like 3 times, and the Canadian government kept rejecting it because you're not allowed to deport American Indians on either side of the border. Um, Even if they're criminals, actually, they can still come right back. But uh, the Canadian government, like I said, the Canadian consulate in California sent them a letter saying, "Hey, she's an American Indian, release her. Like, what are you doing? We're not taking a deportation from her." So they released me, but they decided not to release me on my own recognizance. They paroled me to American citizens under a supervisor program, which again, they're making money on, which means I had to be under full surveillance tracking system. I had to be giving updated pictures. They had my location at all times. I had to live where they approved me to live, which was with single American men, which you're also not supposed to do. I had to only work when I was approved to work. I couldn't leave the state or the city, even my house at certain points in time. And if I ended up homeless or tried to escape the situation, I could be redetained and deported. And so somebody's life and liberty is being restricted for financial gain, and they're also being abused. These people try to force me to prostitution, try to sell me to people, drugged me, beat me, held me at gunpoint repeatedly in different states. I was forced to go with them from state to state where they wanted me to go. And you can't help yourself. You're literally, it's peonage. You're a slave to the person and what they want you to do because you're in this position where you're not allowed to help yourself. And so I was given a social security number and, that permit, the work permit and everything, but my social security number has nothing attached to it. It's my name and that's it. They don't have my race or any identifying factors because if they did, they would have to leave me alone. And so ultimately, I think trafficking is restricting someone's life and liberty and also gaining a financial benefit of it. You're exploiting an individual and forcing them in a situation where they're being sexually and financially exploited, and there's nothing they can do about it. And people think, well, oh, you can just leave. No, no. because they were going to put me actually across to the Mexican border when they first drove me, because they drove me from uh, Montana Sweetgrass Port of Entry on October 1st of 2020 all the way to the Mexican Arizona border. And they knew they couldn't fly me because if I pulled up to the airport and the TSA or whatever saw my American passport and Indian card, they would have been like, what the hell is going on here? So they drove me all the way there. And by the grace of God, I tell everybody I didn't end up on the other side of the Mexican border. They just drove me backwards and went to Pahrump, Nevada. However, when I filed my green card a couple months ago, I went to Nashville, Tennessee, and I was staying with a family who volunteered at Children's Health Defense. They took me down there and we showed them all my paperwork and documents and everything. And I was like, this was going on. People were like, oh my gosh, it should have never happened. I'm going to file your green card. So they took everything, they filed my green card. About a week or so later, I get a letter in the mail from immigration saying, if I don't leave America, then they're going to send me to a third country. They're going to charge me a large sum of money, arrest me, and send me to a third country. I still have the letter. And they said, you don't have to go back to Canada, but you must find a third country to accept you. I said, what the actual hell is going on? And so, this is what it is. This is what it is. And people don't understand. It doesn't make sense to a lot of people because they're like, how can all these things be happening? But it's like this was a very slow, methodical chess match for people to get to this point to do this. And what they don't realize is that allowing all of these changes to come through, that people are thinking is just liberty and freedom and letting people be who they want to be, is actually being done so that it can be easier to take kids. Like I said, I knew since I was a kid, my mom changed the name on my birth certificate. I still have the documents of my original, the change of my first name all the way to, the Dubois and then back to Richardson. And I didn't think anything of it because I was like, okay, that's just my mom being spiteful or something. I don't know. Now I'm like, the people who were directing her to do that, they knew at that time that that's how it was going to be done. And it was something that was on a much smaller, more kind of quiet scale. And now it's just blatant and open. You got the border crazy. And then, if a kid says that they don't feel like a girl today, you can send them to another state in a shelter where they can get medical treatment to be another gender, and parents can't have any information about it. And so a lot of people think, and I'll land here, a lot of people think, well, this is not my problem, it doesn't affect me, but quite frankly, it does. What they're doing to me is what they quite literally are endeavoring to do to every American citizen, and letting them take liberty from one person is ultimately letting them take liberty from everybody.
I see your father has joined us. I wanted to give you an opportunity to say hi and introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name's Dale. I'm obviously Keisha's my daughter. I'm a mechanical engineering technologist with a Bachelor of Technology. I pioneered some research into HVAC infection controls for the COVID pandemic. And what I found was a delivery system for a biological weapon that was designed to look like a random outbreak. And so COVID-19 was disseminated in a manner to look like random outbreaks. This is why you saw hot spots of transmission and super spreaders, because of the delivery system that was constructed, and it still exists. And when I brought it forward, it would have, the government, because it came from the CDC, would have had to explain why they constructed a delivery system that exists within the United States and Canada to deliver a biological weapon. It was done in a manner that the persons that would be implementing it and given the guidance from the government would be the ones who'd be setting up your system to deliver the biological weapon unknown to yourself, because it was given to people who had no idea of what they were doing, and we had evidence that was being implemented wrong. And so when we brought that to the government, it was instant retaliation. There was no talking, there was no helpful. They were committing crimes. Then they stole my youngest daughter, They started to persecute my oldest daughter and me. I mean, they wiped me out financially. The RCMP and the Saskatchewan Health Authority, instead of letting me get into the court, they arrested me. They didn't follow any law and then strapped me to a table and drugged me without examination and began to interrogate me about the very engineering controls that I was got asked for them to investigate. And so, I mean, a delivery system for a biological weapon, it's treason. There's just no other word for it. And since they unleashed COVID, I mean, that's an act of levying war, and there's no excuse, right? So that's why the hammer came down, and then they continued to cover their fraud, and every person who is involved in it, whether you be a judge, whether you be a police officer, or anybody else, you can't see treason and say, oh, that's not my responsibility. So these guys can go ahead and take away all of your freedom in your country. It's not the way it works. And so now with this upcoming disease, well, it's more likely going to be spread through the same delivery system that no one has touched for the last 3.5 years, because they suppressed the hell out of me and my daughter. And every time I took a step to try to expose it, they directly punished my daughter. And that's just the way the Inquisition works. And anybody who helped me, they came after them. And so even my family members here in Canada that tried to help me, they wiped them out so that I can't help my daughter. So she has to be left there to be trafficked, so that the people who don't want this exposed, well, they're like, well, we'll stop torturing your daughter and sexually assaulting her and trafficking her if you stop reporting the treason. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to let people get killed, because you're going to still do filth to my daughter anyway. I have no reason to trust you. You're a criminal, right? So that's just warped in ways that I can't even begin to understand. And people like that, they need the full extent of the law, because they only did these things so that they could murder innocent people. And that's unacceptable.
Out of their way to do, like I said, my dad explains it a lot better than me and more like logical, factual, like concise order. But a lot of this stuff was done before that day of the hearing. Like, a lot of things were constructed to hurt us before that period. Like, for example, Robert Cannon, the man who was sexually assaulting on both sides of the border and actually brought me to the border and just left me there. Before we got arrested that day, he created a fake marriage in my name with him, and I had already been married for the last couple of years. I've only ever been married once, to Dave Derry. And the only reason I found out about this marriage is because the police wrote to my dad on some document or something in the court saying they know that Robert Cannon is his son-in-law. My dad said, what are you talking about? My son-in-law is Black and he lives in Quebec. And only when I was going through the divorce process, the court in Quebec told me, okay, you actually also have this other divorce with this person in your middle name and your last name. And so a lot of things like this are constructed. People don't, I don't know how to say it, like, they don't understand. It seems like people think like coincidence or something else, but there's so many things that are constructed in advance to set up this very situation. Do you understand what I'm saying?
No, I really do understand what you're saying. And what's baffling to me about the situation is more the extent at which they've gone through to really make your lives a living hell. We talk about it. We've seen the government influence in many different situations in many different countries. But I don't think that the people who I would call the normies understand the extent to which people are willing to go in the upper echelons in order to, proverbially kneel on the neck of people who want to stand up and say something. So that's really like my big takeaway here is I study a good bit about human trafficking. I study a good bit about government overreach, governments breaking the law, and even I, I feel as if I'm a total novice when I listen to you guys talk about this because you think that these are levels of evil that are not commonplace. These or even possible. Exactly. How could somebody orchestrate something not just so horrible to somebody but so passionately evil? And that's what this
Yes.
that's what this whole situation is. It's like it feels almost, you know, it feels fictional almost. It's stranger than fiction type stuff listening to the ways that the government is come after you. And I just hope that the I my very small voice in the void is able to help bring attention to the situation.
The
Well,
the re
ultimately the sorry, I'll just say quick. Ultimately, they have to do what is absolutely necessary to crush you. And they're going to make it as worse as possible for the person in that situation so that they give up. Because if you show that you can stand up and you can go against the narrative and do what's right, then other people are going to do it too. Like, and especially for people that they put, I guess, women in my situation, for example, the guy who did the fake marriage. When these courts set these things up, they don't let you come in and give your evidence as a victim. They don't ever let me speak in court. In fact, they had that man, Robert Cannon, speaking in court for me all these years as my spouse. So, they set things up in a way so that they can just continue to do whatever they need to do while suppressing you so that you don't get where you need to get and that other people don't get the encouragement, I guess, to keep going as well. But that, go ahead.
Yeah, you gotta when you sit down and think about why they did it, right? Because if this was in early 2020 when I came and brought this delivery system, this would have shut down the entire pandemic response. So all the companies that invested all of that money into profiting off of COVID would have not made a single dollar. All the vaccine companies, the pharmaceutical companies, all the billions of dollars that they were making would have not been made. So there was a lot of vested interest in people shutting this down because the amount of financial gain made by these criminals would have not happened. And then this next upcoming pandemic that they're now talking about, or this disease coming out in China, the way that they're doing it identically like they did in 2019, they wouldn't be able to cheat in the manner that they did in the election. So, I mean, there's a lot of people that had a vested interest in stopping this. And that's why they came down with the way that they did. And I mean, that's really it. That's the financial aspect of it. And Biden wouldn't be where is right now. Trudeau wouldn't be where he is right now. And all these other people. So what do you have to do? Right, in their eyes, they want to get rid of this and silence it as quickly as possible. This is why no law enforcement, they make sure that the dirty people get into where they need to be and they're communicating the information to shut it down, because when you uncover the delivery system, then they don't, what's their argument? They're like, well, why did you do this? Right? Unless you plan to use it. Oh, wait, you are using it because it explains what these doctors are saying, what they're seeing. And so it's like the smoking gun. The doctors have the bullets, they provided them the gun, and now they don't have a chance, and they don't want that. So really, they're criminals. That's all I have to say.
So you've touched a little bit on this like delivery system, and you explained it to an extent, but I'm a little slow in this regard. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, and the engineering, for one, is a very complicated thing. This is why they did it with this, because the average person, they don't get it. But think about, I mean, think about when you mix two, or you have colored water, right? and you need to dilute it so much that it becomes clear again. That's how you're going to get the pathogens out of the air. Well, you think that the way they have you to set up your system by giving you bad instructions is that you, instead of adding more clear water, you're actually adding more colored water. But you could be adding clear water, but you don't know. They want to make it look random, and this is why you basically you see, um, you know, certain areas are having the hotspots, which is tied to poor ventilation. Like you're seeing it in hospitals and so forth, where you're generating more aerosols. Where, like when you go to the dentist, you drill the little mist that sprays in the air.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they can put, this is how they deliver biological weapons. And you can go and look at the CDC website, the WHO, they'll tell you in the level 4 labs, they're studying biological weapons to weaponize them through aerosols and all the things that you're hearing about that they're talking about upcoming pandemics are all things that are delivered through aerosols. And so they they created it this way and gave it to people under a bunch of duress and said, well, this is what you're supposed to do. But no, that's not what you're supposed to do. It's like having a thermostat and thinking that you're setting it for 68 degrees when you're leaving for your house for the winter, but you don't know what it's set to. So it could be shutting off. And then you come back and your pipes are frozen. It might work, it might not. You have no way of knowing. And this is what they gave to people. And so it would make whatever you put out look random, and you could try to pass it off as a disease. It's a very disgusting way to do things. And yeah, people who did this, they thought it out very well because they took something that worked and then they broke it and then said, here you go, and gave it to people who had no idea what they were doing.
So I know you guys have your own podcast. I know you guys talk about this stuff pretty consistently. You know, I work with a lot. I've worked with and I've known quite a few whistleblowers. And one thing I just want to ask you guys is, after everything you've been through, after, losing your daughters and losing your personhood and, going through what most people would call, excessive torture, where do you guys, how do you guys still have this drive? Like, where does this come from, do you think? And I don't want to be insulting, but, I very much respect it. And I think that more people should exemplify that bravery, but I can't help but wonder, and, yeah, that's where I'm coming from.
I mean, it's God. I'm a Christian, and I believe that that you have to do what's right, regardless of the consequences, because I have to answer to God at the end of the day, and God tells me to love my brothers myself. Well, would I want to be killed by something like this? No, then I can't let somebody else be killed by this, because that would be wickedness, knowing that that could kill somebody and just said, well, oh, it's not my problem. That's just evil. And so at the end of the day, yeah, is it difficult sometimes? Yes. But at the end of the day, God doesn't say he's going to take away our problems. He promises to give us the strength to go through it. And then, that's really it. We got to do what God asks, because if he gives us something that we don't deserve, so other people should get the same grace that God gives us.
Yeah, and for myself, I'm not even gonna lie. I'm a woman, and like I was telling you earlier about, I'll say starting off, it's God first and foremost, but I am a woman, and I said to you earlier about, people always telling me, Casey, you're so stoic and composed, and you don't show much emotion and blah blah blah. Maybe not in the face, because I have to keep myself that way to get through this situation. But any man listening to me talk can understand that I'm emotional, which is why I said, my dad, he would explain this a lot better. He came and he started talking about it. It's very clear and concise. And a lot of women who go through this situation because we're emotional are so traumatized by the events that they can't they can't get the help that they need because they don't know a lot of the information. They can't process a lot of the information on the back end or on the outside that they can't see that's actually happening. And they go and tell their story to somebody and it doesn't make sense. And so they kind of get dismissed or seen as crazy and things like that. I tell people all the time I attribute being alive to God and my father, because if I didn't have my dad, quite frankly, I would be dead. There's no way I would have made it through this situation if I didn't have my dad helping me like every step of the way of the situation as much as possible, regardless of what the situation was, what was going on. Because women can't navigate these things by themselves. I think that what I'm trying to say is that God needs to be an important factor in your life because I'm genuinely suffering every day. So is my family, but he'll help you through it. Secondarily, the women that are going through this, people need to understand um, how it affects them and how they will behave and communicate and things like that. And then also there needs to be men around them that is going to protect them and help them, good fathers and good spouses, brothers, whatever, because it's like an impossible. It's not impossible. It's very close to impossible as a woman to get through this situation if you don't have a single man around you that cares about you. So that's what I would say.
Well, I'm going to have to wrap up this live stream for now. I appreciate both of you coming on so much and sharing this very personal and crazy, turbulent aspect of your life. What can we do to support you? Where can we find out about this information? Just any final words or messages you'd like to leave before we wrap up?
I'll go first because my daughter's better to listen to at the end. I mean, she's got a better voice. Um, I would say that, get behind the people that are doing things. And I mean, doing things like this is just being faithful in little things. And eventually you get to those things. God gives you the strength that you need at the time, just do the things, help people. But, and more men need to get in this game because I see more women by far standing up for these things than men. So men need to start helping out more and helping the women out. We're better working together than leaving only one side to do it. And also you can reach me at DJS Richardson on Twitter. I mean, Getter and True Social, and I guess the Karris Project on Twitter and so forth. And there's a web page. You can reach it at www.dsrkarrisconsulting.com. And there's a page for the Karris Project. Just click on it. It has all of the information. We have a switch to USA for anybody who wants Patriot products to support us. We also have an affiliation with the wellness company where we have a link where it's you can use a promo code Karris, or we have a link at the Karris Project, or we have a Give Send Go that's on the Karris Project page if you want to support that way. So those are ways that you can help out because we're trying to get this information in hands of the people so that they can, you've got people to file criminal complaints and do petitions to their government and that sort of thing to make changes and to get this information out. Go ahead, Keisha.
How can you support us? I would say, first and foremost, I think the number one thing that can actually support us in our efforts every day is for men and women to be good men and women again, to go back to God and traditional values, for women to respect men like their fathers, their brothers, their spouses, whatever, and allow them to lead you to success, because it will make life a lot easier for you, and for the men to love and respect and cherish the women, because that in itself will make the world such a better place and solve a lot of problems, and to have courage as well. Now, personally, you can follow us on the Karris Project. We talk a lot about all this stuff. And there's a lot of people that we have come on that share their story, and it gives people a better picture of how these things happen, the way that they affect people, and what's really going on. So that, like I said earlier, you can really apply it to your life if it's necessary. If it's happening to you, you can understand, like, oh shoot, this is serious. So you can find us on the Karris Project, and then I'm also on Twitter. We also have Rumble. Keisha Richardson, I guess, on Twitter.
All right. Well, thank you again for coming on, and we'll definitely have you back very soon, I hope. And I wish you both the best, and everything that you're doing, and hopefully finding your sister, your daughter. I'm praying that comes to fruition. Let me go ahead and end this live stream. Give me 1 second.